All right, welcome out to our weekly mastermind call. Today, we actually want to talk a little bit about the different levels of intensity with which you approach the business. If any of you have got have been using the most recent version of the business overview, you've noticed some language that we've introduced where we talk about spare time, part-time, and full-time, and kind of give some direction on what exactly that means. And we also want to talk about the limits that with where that leaves you, like how many people have been putting in the time, a certain amount of time, whether that's spare, part, or full, and they're getting to a particular stage in the business and they're wondering why they can't move past that particular phase. And so we want to talk about that, and to kind of help bring a little bit of clarity to the business building process. So, additionally, I have here, you'll see this on the mastermind call as this is being recorded. Connor's back in town, so
So we got video.
so we got video, so we're excited for that. But as we share the recording of this call in the future, you'll actually be seeing some of the imagery that we're describing. And so we're excited to give you a little sneak peek into what's going to be launched probably next week. Right. It's actually going to print today, so we're excited about it, and we've showed it to quite a few diamonds on the team and other leaders on our team to kind of get some feedback. And right now the feedback's been awesome, and we've taken the feedback, made some adjustments and stuff. But for the most part, we're excited about the quick start guide. And this is it's kind of what it is it's a guide that is designed to be
right. It's
like
it's duplication of getting new people started.
Yeah, so when a person decides they want to build, it's kind of this is a precursor to the fast track planner.
Right.
Because the fast track planner is a little bit more around tracking your numbers, more of a mentoring tool. And this is getting somebody started. Well, in the process of doing this, we have a little graphic that you'll see here, and it talks about how it basically gives you an idea of how long it will take you to get to any particular rank, depending upon the amount of time that you're putting in your business, and the cap, how far you'll go, and then where you can't go, based upon the amount of time you're putting into it. So we're excited about that. So basically, this is how it looks. I want to describe this to you. If you had the ranks go horizontally across your if you had, let's say you had you were drawing this out, and you had executive, elite, premier, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, blue diamond, and presidential diamond all across the front. And then you have the different amounts of time that you're putting into your business. Spare time, which is about 3 to 5 hours a week. Part-time, which we've called 8 to 12 hours a week. And then full-time, which is 15 to 30 hours a week, which obviously isn't full-time for our normal bucket hauling jobs.
Right, because we don't like bucket hauling.
Yeah. So spare time, part-time, full-time. And basically, what this is describing to us is that if we're doing it spare time 3 to 5 hours a week, then we will max out in our business in about 4 to 6 months. We'll max out at about elite. And that's basically the level with which you'll grow. And then if you bump that up to part-time, 8 to 12 hours a week, then you'll get to elite by 2 to 4 months. You'll get to premier 6 to 8 months, and then you'll get to silver in 8 to 12 months. And that's really kind of where it stops. You may hit gold if people, if your upline's pushing you there or things like that, but
only if somebody else is building you.
But as far as like a solid organization, that's the extent of it.
Right.
And then we have full-time, where you're getting to 15 to 30 hours a week. You're getting to elite in 2 months, 2 to 4 months. but then you're hitting silver in about 4 to 8 months. You're hitting gold anywhere, but we gave him a pretty big swath, but it's basically between 8 and 18 months. Why is that?
It's just I think different depending on where somebody is and different things that affect how what kind of hours they put in.
Really, it depends on what kind of leaders they're able to find.
Right, effectiveness of activities, how well they're connected. There's different variables that are included with the amount of time that you put in, I think.
Right. Other milestones: diamond in 2 to 4 years, blue diamond 3 to 5 years, and presidential 4 to 6 at that rate. Right. So, as you're looking at your business, I want you to consider how much time, what level of intensity you're bringing to your business. And if you're just doing it in spare time, it's kind of it's a good phrase because it's like it's in your spare time. You're not making time for it. It's just fitting in around your life.
Right. Or that's some time.
Yeah. And then you got part time where you're actually giving it some real effort, but it's also taking a backseat to a lot of things.
Right. It's a focus with structure moving forward, with some intent and purpose, but is still not the top priorities.
Right. And then you're doing 15 to 30 hours a week. Typically you're doing this while you have a job at times. And then the reason this gets easier, the bigger ranks you go, is you can drop your job. And then it's...
Right. I know when my job ended, I was just about gold. No, I think, I was gold. And then it was... and then that extra time was created. And it was really quickly after that I went diamond.
Right. So what I want to do is I want to open this up to the mastermind a bit, and I want to talk in particular to the diamonds, platinums on the call. Would you say that what we've just described is accurate? If you were to look at your team, star 5 star to raise your hand. If you were to look at your team, are you seeing anyone that is putting in, spare time effort that's getting past elite? Or are you seeing people on your team that are hitting silver? They can't quite get past that silver gap to gold and above. Maybe they've reached gold, but they're not a solid gold. Like, remember solid gold? Back in the day, it was hee-haw and solid gold. Anyway, I'm just dating ourselves.
The show. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
Show.
That's right.
Sorry.
I was like flashing back to doTERRA days, and when we were solid gold.
No. So, no, I totally took it in the gutter. But anyway, but have you seen this? Are you seeing this? Because I think that this, honestly, the more I've shown this to people, the more they kind of realize that's why I'm not moving on, is because I'm not bringing a level of intensity to this that is going to create the momentum necessary that allows us to really pull back. I mean, to do that. So it's kind of this interesting thing. So, all right. So star 5 star to raise your hand. Have you seen this pattern as you've been building your business where this is that, frankly, you can't get past particular ranks without another level of intensity with which you bring the business? Okay. Maybe some examples you've seen on your team or your own experience.
I know why. Oh, there's somebody.
Okay, Bernie Marquez, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Perfect. Hey, yeah, so I really like what you guys have done as far as breaking it down to those 3 categories, because I guess for me, from a personal experience, I've experienced that with, basically plateauing and now reevaluating, okay, how much time am I really dedicating to, moving on to the next level? And so it was a really good eye-opener to see that, especially in our regional training where Rod showed us that example. Are you working, in your spare time, part-time, or full-time? And so it just really was good, especially the last few months. Because really that's what we've been. We've kind of plateaued because we haven't dedicated and had the intensity necessary to move to that next level. So it was a good visual for me.
Yeah, have you seen have you seen people on your team that you're just kind of scratching your head going, man, this person has everything they need to do this. And when it all comes right down to it, they're just not doing it enough.
Absolutely, yeah. It comes down to not doing it enough or long enough. It's like, I know it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago we had the talk, the Mastermind on momentum. And so we kind of, we go all in for, say, 3 or 4 classes. We go in full time for 3 or 4 classes, and we just taper off because we don't see the results we wanted. And so if we could just really understand that it's a full-time deal, it's not just, putting in 30 hours in 3 days and then hoping that we see the results we want.
Right, yeah. It's a diamond in a day. That would be cool.
Yeah, and actually,
it'd be awesome.
The thing that's really weird is that the more I've mentored, there is a big, massive misunderstanding of how this all works, because there are people that they'll tell me like, yeah, my goal is to go diamond. They'll tell me that. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want to accomplish this next week? And they're giving me spare time activities. We're like, well, and you're just like, wow. I mean, if you think that you're going to retire in with a couple hours a week, I mean, what
on a 6-figure income?
Right, exactly. On a 6-figure income, yeah, retire on a 6-figure income. David, what are your thoughts on this? David Ellis.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'm going to keep it to just one. The reality is kind of what you just talked about when you mentioned, people that want to retire, they want to be successful. They tell you that, and then the next thing around, you say, okay, so are you ready to get started? And they say yes. You say, okay, when can you teach your first class? Or when can you do a first class? I say, well, I've got prom and I've got my kids graduating, and then I've got we're taking a vacation, so I think July would be a good time. Like, now, I thought we just talked about you wanting to make this something significant. And anything significant in your life comes with sacrifice. And I just look at it from, when you talk about timing. My wife worked at this by herself. I mean, I supported her. I watched a lot of kids and changed a lot of diapers and things like that for the first year and a half. And we hit gold the first month that I got engaged. Now, that was not because of me. That just so happened that that's what had happened. And then we hit diamond 4 months later. And the reason for that is because of that. It was just a whole other level of commitment when we had her and me working together. And then she had a baby, right? She had a baby that,
like 4 days before you went diamond or something.
Right. And so, I mean, there was, but it was the commitment of, I had given up, right? I had given up, my business, half of my income. I had 106 rental properties. I gave that half of that to my brother, and he came in and he started managing it. The deal was, I'm going to give you half of it and you own it. You run it, right? You run it like you're the owner, and we were business partners there. But I wanted nothing to do with the day-to-day because I wanted to be able to go help my wife. And when I did that, the commitment, I had left behind half of our income. And so I treated this like a full-time job. Yeah. I worked it like a full-time job. I worked it like I wanted it to be my retirement plan, because the only reason that I decided to do that was because I sat down and I did the numbers, I did the math, and I realized that in a lot shorter period of time, I could create retirement income here in doTERRA than in the same period of time working and doing what I was doing. Yeah. And so I just recognized it for what it was, and I went after it, and I took it on as a commitment to be my full-time retirement thing. And when I treated it that way, it became that, and it grew that way. And my wife was the same way. My wife, she set the foundation for this whole thing because she worked it in the beginning. She worked it, she was still a mom and she still did all those things, but she worked it with the desire, with the idea of one day being a presidential diamond. She didn't work it with the idea of we'll see how it works and we'll see what it turns into, and maybe if I don't have anything else going on, then yeah, I'll do a class here and there. it comes back to the quote I shared at the regional training notes last week that I've heard it said many different ways, but the essence is this, is if you're willing to work for a period of time like most people won't, then you'll be able to live the rest of your life like most people can't. And people have to recognize that if you're looking, like you said, if you're looking for this to be retirement income, then dang it, you got to treat it like it's a retirement possibility or potential, not like it's something that you happen to be engaged in because you like the products and somebody told you you could get your oils for free. If that's the case, that's okay. But be clear with your leadership and be clear with those people you're working with, because if they're treating you like somebody that wants to be presidential and you're treating it like somebody that wants to get their product for free, we've got a major miscommunication, and that's going to create a lot of resentment. And so I just encourage everybody, just be clear. And if you don't know where you're at with it, then that's where you need to sit down with your mentor and you need to figure out where you're going with it so that you guys can treat it the way that you intend it to be. Because if you want it to be presidential diamond income, it can. It absolutely can. There's nothing that can stop. There's nothing that can stop you from getting there except yourself. And so it's just a matter of your level of commitment, the commitment you put into it, and then the commitment that you follow up with once you've vocalized that that's what you want. Because at the end of the day, it's what you actually do, and it's the activity that you actually create that will get you where you want to be.
Right.
I think in addition to that too is that when you look in those things, it's like going presidential diamond is a process of working with other people that want to go presidential diamond, and I think a lot of people are striving for presidential diamond with full-time investment, but at the same time are putting the burden of that rank advancement on some-timers and part-timers.
Well, or really they're putting the burden on themselves because they're working on some or part-timers.
Right.
Because they're like, okay, I'm going to do it with the first 3 people that committed to me. And it's like, but at what level are they committing?
Right. And if those initial people are some-timers, that makes it a difficult proposition because according to this graph, they will have a difficult time going platinum.
Now, to be clear, I want to, you and I have actually, we discussed this amongst ourselves and also with other diamonds when we looked at this, and we thought, do we want to show people this? because sometimes you want them to just get started. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I'm going to turn this over to Brianna Hess right now because she has her hand raised, and she kind of fit that, where you saw the potential in her, and she was willing to give it some time, some spare time. You know what I mean? But you saw the potential in her that if she ever took this seriously. So Brianna, you're up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm here, Seth.
Go ahead.
So I absolutely love this topic, and I love what Bernie and what David has had to say, and you and Rod so far, because I was actually talking last night with one of my good friends who's in doTERRA, and we were kind of talking about how some people, they just can't see it. They just can't see the big picture, and it made me think, at first when Rod asked me to hold a class, I held a class, not because I wanted anything to do with the business, but just because I wanted to do him a favor, and so I was holding classes. And I remember at one point, Brian and I sat down, and it was very early on in our sharing phase, so it wasn't like it took us very long, but we saw it, and we knew that the money was real. And so I think that there's 2 different kinds of people. There's people who know, they've seen what you and Rod have created. They've seen what the Ellises, what Courtney Moses, what Katie Glasgow, what me and Bryant have created. And they know because we've created it that money is real and that they can create it too. And then you have a different type of person who thinks, but that's their thing. I'm so glad that they were able to do that because that's their thing. That's what they're good at. And I'm sure the money is real, but I can't commit to it until I know that it's real. And the funny thing is they won't know that money is real until they actually start doing those activities, until they start building the business. Because although we all appreciate and $500 a month can really change someone's financial situation, some people still don't look at that as this is enough to change my life and to give all of my time to this for a period to create something bigger. It's still not real to them. And so I guess I just want people to know that the money is real, but in order to do it, it's not easy. It's hard. It takes commitment. It takes sacrifice. It takes humbling yourself. But the money is real, but it's so worth it. And so that's one thing that I was thinking about is we find it hard in our team some people either get it or they don't. And I can say that just because you don't get it or someone on your team doesn't get it, and maybe they haven't gotten it for a year, maybe they haven't gotten it for a couple of years, doesn't mean that they won't eventually get it. It just takes a little bit more time. But when you were talking, let me try and think. I had a thought when you were talking just a little bit ago. Sorry, I'm trying to refresh my memory real quick.
Let me actually, let me kind of talk a little bit and then give you some time to get that thought, because you bring up some interesting points. I think, there's a lot of us that we start off spare time and we get to elite, we kind of get to those plateau, and basically what Bernie said earlier is we plateau. We get to the plateau of that particular time and intensity effort. And then what happens is that we typically are attending an event. We're at convention, we're at a monthly training, we're at a regional training, we're on a mastermind call, we're attending some sort of event. And events are the things, at events, decisions are made. And it's when someone believes, like, okay, the money can be real for me, like Brianna was just saying, or it's time for me to give this a much bigger effort, and so then they go to the next rank. So like someone can start spare time, they can. It's just that don't expect to go past elite. Maybe premier if you happen to get lucky and find two people that are willing to do that too. But typically builders are attracted to leaders, and if you're doing it spare time, you're not leading, you're just doing. And then you do it part-time for a while, and part-time's significant, 8 to 12 hours a week. They feel like they're really doing it, and they're probably putting enough effort in that they think that that's enough to get them there. And then they get to silver, and they're going to plateau there. They're going to stay there until they typically are attending an event, a call or something like that, and then they make another decision. And we had that call a few weeks ago where we talked about the different decisions people make. The decision to start, the decision to do it when it's harder than they thought it was, the decision to let go, like David just mentioned, letting go of his job to pursue this, and then the decision to go big. If I'm going to do this, let's go big. And all of those decisions match the different levels of intensity that this requires to break through those plateaus. Have you gathered your thought yet, Brianna?
I've not. When I do, I'll raise my hand again now.
Okay, Jacqueline Child, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to point out that I actually have seen people on my team that do the 15 to 30 hours a week and actually stay at an elite level.
Wow.
And that's because they are not doing the right kinds of activities. So I think we need to clarify, they're watching webinars, lots of webinars, just things like that they're useful to a degree, but they're not going to give you the business you need. So I think it's important that when people hear that number, they realize that is doing the 631 schedule, and not just number 6,
Right.
Got to be doing all of the 631 schedule. And I've also seen, in fact, I went to a diamond mine training a couple of years ago with Brianna Hovey, I think is who it was. Anyway, she was talking about how there's people who just keep going to events, waiting to become the person they need to be to start. But you really become that person through the doing. And I love events. I think they're incredibly important. Absolutely, totally. People make the most important decisions, the hardest decisions at events. But I have seen just a ton of people make those hard decisions at events and then change their mind when they get into the thick of things. And so I just think that it's just important that we realize what that means. Like that 15 to 30 hours, needs to be doing the most important activities. And you could waste all day long. You could spend 8 hours a day. I've seen people do this pretty much, but they're just not doing the right activities. So that's a really important thing for people to understand who are just on this. It's not filling sample bottles. It's not watching webinars, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that's a good point, Jacqueline, because you're kind of the poster child as far as you only had a certain amount of time to give it, and so you could only do the most important activities, and ironically that ended up being one of the keys to your success, is that you didn't have a lot of time to give, and so the time that you gave was doing the activities that actually that did the right thing. And you're right, it's the 6-3-1. But if you're just stuck doing, number 6, what can I read, watch, or listen to that'll help me develop as a leader, and that's all you do, that's like sharpening your sword and never going to war. You're just constantly just sharpening.
Or riding saddle rock horses, You can watch guys on a rodeo all day long, and it looks so effortless until you get on the horse, and then all bets are out.
Yeah. Yeah, you can stay. Well, it's kind of like when Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right.
It's like, hey, man, until you go and do this, it's just,
Right.
There's only so much you can learn from the books and the trainings and the...
Right. Yeah, until you're on the horse.
Okay, cool. Alonto, what are your thoughts on this?
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
So on the topic of plateauing and I guess the amount of commitment or level of activity to actually get to the next level. So we've been Diamond, I guess, for around coming to 2 years now. And recently we've kind of made a major shift in the level of activity that we were used to. So kind of starting with the whole process of beginning at the stages of like sharing the oils, inviting people to a class, and doing those key activities. And really when you come to like that level of success, like reaching Diamond, you need like an incentive, or you need like another push to get to the next level, right? You need to because we kind of got comfortable at that rank, and the money that we were bringing in, and just recently have lit a fire to like the next level of belief that we want to get to. So the next level of belief after Diamond and Platinum, like belief in your why, goes into the belief in your influence. And really what we've found to be like one of the most amazing things about reaching like this rank is your ability to recruit literally instantly, because you have like the level of proof that you're able to give to people on that way. And the level of activity that we've found to be like the most fruitful is like what you and Rod basically identify, is that now our importance is committing builders, is doing as many of those activities that helps to commit builders for our leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
And ramp up.
Sorry, go ahead.
And ramping up, focusing like our time to do those activities for like our current leaders and maybe our future leaders also.
Yeah, you're kind of describing something that happens all along the way. I mean, you got comfortable at Diamond. Well, I got comfortable at Blue. And I've been comfortable for a long time. And then, and I know people that got comfortable at getting their products paid for, and people that got comfortable at Silver and so forth. And there has to, my problem, frankly, I'm going to go ahead and be a little vulnerable here on the call. But my problem has been that doTERRA did what I needed it, what I wanted it to do, what I dreamt it could do. I was like, hey, if I could get to this amount of money, oh man, I could do and be and go where whatever I want to do, be and go, and you know, and all that stuff. I could do all that, and it happened. And so it has been one of those things where it's like, what happens when your why is accomplished, and you have got to, like what Alonto was just saying, believe in your influence and what you can do beyond this, and then you go, because you know, it's like, but I have my dream. This is what I wanted. This is exactly why I started, and that why drove me to this point. And now it's like, I have got to find that bigger why, and it's got to create that fire in the belly that's going to cause me to go and do, put in the effort, the full-time effort that it's going to take to move this to Presidential Diamond, and then go from there. So, all right, Lindsay, your hand is raised. I think I've just unmuted your line. Go ahead.
Yes, I know I'm not where you guys are yet, but something that I have found really helpful in the last week for me has been just as you were talking about before, where you guys changed the verbiage on the business overview about walking people through what those steps and what the hours would look like. Talking with your leaders that might be thinking, I'm giving full-time effort, but actually having them for a week. This is what we did over this last week, and people have been bringing me back their results yesterday and today. How many hours are actually put in, not thinking, but putting the steps forward to doing. So it's something that I did over the month of April, because sometimes we get that confused. And sometimes, even though we have the very best of intentions, the time that we're actually spent doing and not just thinking about. So living the 631 schedule and helping others to realize that putting those steps forward and letting your mind be free of just the thought of it, but actually counting on the hours where your feet and your hands are in motion. And the way we did this was I had them write down every time they were actually doing doTERRA, not just thinking, or really even, because I've got a lot of team members that listen to things all day long, and that is great, but until you put your feet and your hands in motion and actually book the class and teach the class and follow up and do these steps that are going to make you successful, that we all know because of that wonderful 631 schedule, but until you free your mind of just the thought, sometimes you think that you're putting forth that effort, and you can get frustrated and think, I'm doing full-time. Why in the world are the results not coming? And from what I have seen, and with the mentoring that I've been doing with my team, is that it's really helpful, and it's kind of like a nicely put slap in the face, but we have to know where our hours are going, and sometimes we just don't know. So actually putting it pen to paper can give people the realization that I'm wasting time here, or I'm not putting my best efforts here. So that's something that we found very successful. Just in the last week is when we started doing it, because I finally woke up and realized this is it.
Yeah.
So it's been really helpful, just putting that pen to paper and seeing it right in front of you.
You know, the thing that's awesome about that, Lindsay, is that I actually received mentoring from Rod before doTERRA came into either of our lives, when I owned a business and he owned a business, and you taught me about key time categories.
Right.
And you introduced me to like a planner type of a thing, but it wasn't a planner that I necessarily was planning what I was going to do. It was a planner where I was recording what I actually did.
Right.
And that was just revolutionary for me. Would you like to explain that at all?
Yeah. So it was based on the key time categories. We had it from 0 to 5, and then I had a planner developed that actually allowed you to record every 30 minutes what your focus was for that 30 minutes in terms of 0 through 5. In other words, 0 was no activity that was actually pushing your physical business forward. So that might have been family things or lunch or whatever. And then category 1 was administrative types of activities, and then it kind of built up. The activities built up in value to the maximum one, which was value creating. And then we'd have in those days I'd have my clients track it, and I found that I got more efficient just by having the tracking sheet there, because I would look down, and then every hour or so I would kind of
put a 1 or a 2,
I'd put a 1 or a 0 or a 5 or whatever on it, and then I would add those up at the end of the week, and we created ratios. And at that time, I had figured out the optimal ratio that created business growth. So if you had a certain percentage of your time in each key time category had an optimal time percentage to it. And
it would actually be pretty cool to do that, to try it. We should, on a mastermind sometime, we should get everybody to just go through their week and say, okay, this is the amount of time that you're putting into your business. Just take a planner and just track what you did, and rank it, right? So maybe, or maybe you're just identifying.
We did build one of these for our team a couple of years. I think Courtney Moses challenged me to take that same concept, and we built it, and I think she was using it for a while.
Yeah.
Is Courtney on the call?
I don't. Courtney, you're gonna have to raise your hand for me to find you, but that, I mean, the fact of the matter, I think what the message here is that you're gonna plateau depending on the level of effort you're giving your business, and you're going to plateau depending on the activities you're giving to your business. And I would say that the 631, in particular, question number 1, who are you inviting to class? Well, frankly, the first 5 questions are just critical. I mean, you have to.
Right.
None of those are less important, I don't think. I mean, because follow-up becomes even more important once that's all happened, and then and so on and so forth.
Right.
Janet Marquez, what are your thoughts on this?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on this. This is such a great call. Oh my goodness. And the first thing I'm going to say is that this adding that tool is going to be so amazing, because my personality, I remember Courtney actually 2 years ago actually did sit me down with this time management model and had me color code things and all this stuff. And it was like so hard for me, because I was addicted to multitasking. I was addicted to doing 5 different things at once, because my brain would like do that, and man, I even remember Courtney was so frustrated with me because I couldn't tell what I was doing in those times, and no wonder I wasn't moving forward, because I was spinning my wheels. I would say, okay, this time, right in this hour, I'm doing laundry, but I'm also playing with kids, but I'm also making those hair calls, and it's like, if you are anybody on the call right now and you're doing that, I'm talking to you moms out there, because we do this. We think we can do it. We think we're Superman. But I'm telling you that if you spend your whole day doing 5 things at once, you spend your whole day doing absolutely nothing. And you go to bed feeling discouraged and feeling like, what did I do today?
and you're exhausted.
Breaking yourself from this habit. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
And you're exhausted, right? I mean, it's exhausting.
And you're upset with your husband because he doesn't help you, and you're upset with your kids because they don't help you, and you're upset with your friends and your dog and your mom because nobody's helping you. But it's because you are completely clueless about where your time is going. It's such a frustrating thing, but it is also such an addiction. And in order to break this addiction, you have to let go of the fact that you are not Superwoman, and that you can do one thing at a time. So it's important. You got to do it. It's hard, but necessary.
That's actually really fascinating, because I think what Janet's suggesting here is that it's being great at something when you do it, not being
right. Well, there's stuff. I mean, there's a lot of study that indicates that no one truly multitasks. Like, even a computer doesn't multitask. It has to dedicate itself to whatever the particular activity is, and so all multitasking is going from one focus to another focus and back and forth. and which makes you ineffective or inefficient on a lot of levels.
Right, or you think you're giving it an hour, and in reality, you've given it 10 minutes.
Right.
Oh, but you've put in an hour worth of effort for 10 minutes worth of reward, instead of just giving it's 30 minutes and being done. You know, that type of thing. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in there, if you're wondering if you're addicted to multitasking, if you are ever on your computer and you have 15 different browsers up, you are addicted to multitasking. Stop it.
I even use 2 screens, Janet, so I can keep.
Yeah, I was looking at Rod when you said that.
Because I have my email up and my Facebook and my text message, because I have messaging coming in, pretty continually from 3 different sources. So I have that up, and the websites and whatever it is I'm focused on.
Probably need to fix that. Okay, Courtney, there you are. Your hand's raised. Any thoughts on this topic?
No, you told me to raise my hand so you could find me.
Yeah.
Right. Courtney, we were talking about that time tool that you had me adjust for network marketing, and so that was that topic had come up, and I remember that you were the one that was using it most during that time. So
Yeah, and I still use it today, and I think it's really valuable because, there's times that I've had, leaders call me and they're like, I'm frustrated, I'm not able to maintain a certain rank. Like even a silver I was working with at one point, and through that process, just that 3-week commitment to do that time management, we were able to identify where she was spending her time. And when she was frustrated at this rank of not being solid silver, but was flipping back to premier, we were able to realize that, in that 3 weeks that she was spending the majority of her time in her largest 2 legs, because those are the people that wanted her there, right? Those are the people that are moving and shaking and have all the events going on. And then that third leg was getting, kind of neglected because there wasn't a lot of committed builders in that leg. And so the time wasn't being there. And so I love the time management thing because it really helps you understand where your time is. And I'm like, look, if you want to maintain your rank, the fact of the matter is yeah, you can do all these events in these 2 legs, but until you go out and recruit yourself again, a new builder to put underneath this third leg, you're not going to maintain your silver rank, right? And so it became really clear that she was spending 80% of her time in a leg that frankly wanted her, but wasn't necessarily needed. There was leadership developed, and they could be okay for her to step away. But it's exciting to be in those legs, right? It's like me working in David and Julianne's leg. I love working in that leg. I love those people, right? But it doesn't, help me advance rank. And there's blue diamonds and platinums and golds and silvers all over the place. I don't need to be there, right? So I can back off from that a little bit and go personally recruit and get my other legs going. And so that's just like one of the many, many things that come from if you will just take that 3-week commitment and doing that time management process, and just really helps get clear on, I'm going to spend 20% in this leg, 80% in this leg, and then also identifying like how much of your time, within those legs are you spending on, recruiting or, mentoring people, personal development, all of that. And that really helped me. I mean, when I started doTERRA, I had a 1, 2, and 3-year-old. I mean, I had no time, no spare time, no nothing, right? I barely could shower, and maybe that was only once every 4 days. And so to be on a committed schedule, to sit there and say, this is when I'm working, this is what I'm doing. I think sometimes, see, now you got me on a rant, thanks.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we just sit here and go, oh, well, I'll try and fit this in, but we're not realistic in what we're doing. Like, for example, well, I'm going to work my business at 8 o'clock after I put kids to bed. Okay, well, what are you going to do at 8 o'clock at night? Do you think it's smart to pick up the phone and start calling people at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night when they're working? So from 8 to 10 at night, that's when I can be doing emails or other things, right? So when's the best time that you make the sales calls? When's the best time that you make the follow-up calls? Like, I think it's important when you're scheduling that out to get real about that, because otherwise you reserve this time to work, but the activities you're doing aren't even efficient or effective in that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. And it's, I think the thing that we're hearing a lot when we discuss the 631 and putting in the time is that the other aspect that I don't think we've touched on until Courtney just mentioned this is the importance of strategy. Mm-hmm. Take time to strategize how to build your team, like look at your team, because she's right. I mean, once you find a good team, I mean, I love spending time with teams that are just growing like crazy. It's like, oh yeah, let's show up.
It's like a drug.
Yeah, you're just there and you're loving on
Right?
people.
It's fun, exciting.
Yeah, that's where it's all. You're just like, this
Go
is
work in those
fantastic.
teams that aren't growing. That's like,
Yeah, and in fact, we were discussing the fact that there's different phases in the business that you go through, and the first phase is the building phase, and where you're putting in, like, I mean, this is when it's really the meat of the 631, when you're calling and you're getting people to classes and you're teaching people about the oils, and then you're
getting enrollments.
And member overviews, and that's kind of the meat, right? That's where you're just
Like you're in the trenches.
You're in the trenches of this whole thing, and that's the building phase of the business. That's the first phase. The second phase is the training phase, where you've built enough that now it's about training people how to get into the trenches and how to be successful in that work. And then you get into phase 3, which is the leadership phase, where you're now leading, orchestrating, mentoring, strategizing with all of this to make sure that it's growing. And so even though we have these different spare time, part-time, full-time, there's also the different phases that you go in. Mm-hmm. And the last phase being the inspire phase, where you're inspiring people to live a greater cause and higher purpose and things like that. So it's kind of interesting, because what it means is that, look, it's way more fun to be in the inspire and lead phase. It's way less stress. And so what happens is we build a team, and we spend, like, I may be in the lead or inspire phase of my business in 4 or 5 of my legs, but I'm in the build and train phase in my 6th leg. And so kind of you might want to look at your teams and go, okay, where am I with each of the different legs of my team? Am I in the build phase here? Because, you may be trying to lead and inspire a leg that really needs you to build. And you may need to lead and inspire a team that you're in there building, and you need to actually step up and lead that team and help, start organizing events and things like that. Okay, we have any other? Yes, Brianna Hess, go ahead. I think her thought came back.
Yeah, so I remembered, and it ended up going with a little bit of what Courtney was talking about, and we had talked about how sometimes we feel that the people that are the people that we originally enrolled are the people that should be taking us to these next ranks, right? The people that we originally committed to on our front line to help get there, that they should be the ones that are taking us all the way onto silver and diamond and blue diamond. And the hardest thing to do is to realize if someone's actually willing to put the time in that they said that they were. And oftentimes we feel that we have to, because we committed to helping them achieve their dreams, that we are tied to them. But one of the greatest things that we did for our business was realizing that we should not be putting more time into someone else's dream than they're putting.
Yes.
And sometimes that means giving them space and letting them grow. And so oftentimes we've seen in our organization when people aren't growing, and this was for ourselves as well, when we hit a plateau, it's because we realized at one point that we were putting more time, more energy, and more passion into someone else's business than they were willing to put in themselves. And so we were creating a plateau there because we weren't putting in new blood necessarily. We were trying to, restart a car that didn't have an engine,
Drag.
Carry.
So so sometimes it's best to look and to make sure that the people that we're working with, even though we made the commitment in the beginning, I think sometimes we make all these promises on let's do this together, we can do this, and we don't realize that it's all the work that it's going to go, that is actually takes to build a business. And then these people pitter-patter out, but we still feel tied and connected to their dreams and their desires and what they want. And sometimes we need to let them just be that and be their dreams and their desires. Because if they're not willing to put the time in, we should be putting the time in for it. And we should find people that are willing to put the time in for their dreams. And that's when it's really worth it, is when you're helping other people create what they want instead of trying to do it for someone else.
All right. This is really the crux of invite everyone, work with those that move towards you, mentor the committed, and really understanding that definition. Because what I do is I invite everyone, and I look at people being either in one of those three categories. That I'm either inviting them because they're not moving, or they haven't made a decision to move yet, or I'm working with them, which means they've moved toward me, not I pushed them or chased them or
Founded them.
Right, that I invited and they responded, and then I match that level of energy. Whatever they're bringing to the table, I work with them to that level, just like Brianna was indicating. And then I reserve mentoring, which is I interpret as investing. I invest in leaders that are highly committed, making things occur and things like that. And then we're able to make great resources and all kinds of time and things available to the committed people.
Yeah, exactly. Julianne, did you have a thought? Your hand was raised earlier and I missed you. Any thoughts from you?
Sorry, I did have a thought earlier, and then I had to jump off the call, and now I got back on, so I missed a portion of it. But, I think it's just interesting to me what people are willing to put forth the effort in some things. I have some that have put in their time, as they say, and have said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm getting to the point where I'm just going to have to go get a job. And I think it's just interesting when you have that mind shift of the understanding of what is the difference of going to get a job, especially as a mom, when you're going to have to hire daycare, take your kids to daycare, and that's going to take almost your whole paycheck, if not, a huge chunk of it. But yet they're willing to do that and work 8 hours a day until they can't do that anymore, and then they stop, right? But yet they're not willing to put in 8-hour days for doTERRA. You know what I mean? And I think it's that mind shift of understanding if they're able to put in those 8 hours, that they would be willing to put into another job, and, obviously it could be harder. They could still take their kids to daycare, or they could try and just maneuver it around to where, the kids are watching a movie. Granted, that's not the greatest, but that does the job.
It's better than putting them in daycare all day.
It's not the same as, right, as opposed to paying for someone to do daycare, which a lot of times that is some of the stuff. Now, they do play with them, and it's that mind shift, I think, that some people aren't willing to understand that, am I willing to put forth the effort into it? I'm willing to put 8 hours at, some random job to make $10 an hour, but I'm not willing to put the 8 hours in for doTERRA because I'm just not seeing the results. And so when you can have that mind shift of you're creating something, you are creating something bigger than you can even imagine if you stick with it, if you really are willing to. And it's not a lot. And I missed the very first portion, and I wish I'd been at regional training as well, because it sounds like you gave a lot of good numbers and hours, but even just several good solid hours a day is huge in a doTERRA business, but you have to be consistent with it. When people are like, oh yeah, like David had mentioned, if people are like, oh, well, yes, I'm willing to do this right now, but I've got this going on and this going on and this going on, and it's just, that shift has not changed yet to the understanding of what they really are creating. When you want to create something massive, you don't look at the hours and go, I'm making like $2 an hour right now. Like, that doesn't make sense. But when you're realizing what you're creating and that mind shift happens, that's when, and you're really consistent on a daily basis, Monday through Friday or whatever days you decide that you're going to be working, really, really consistent with those hours. And like everyone's been talking about on the call, being productive in those hours. We're giving out samples. We're having classes. We're inviting people to classes. We're following up. Like, those are the crucial things that are really going to build the business. And so, it's probably more of just what everyone else is being said, but the mindset has to change in order for people to really progress in the business and really see the bigger picture of what can happen for them.
Right. I want to build on what Julianne's saying, and and give a real life example, my own. and so when it comes to like she was saying, people making the mind shift on, oh, so you're going to go out and get a job and you're going to spend time because that will pay more in the short term, which might be necessary. Now, keep in mind, we don't want people to be in financial distress, and we're not discouraging jobs or other ways of making sure your family has enough to sustain itself. We're not saying that at all. What we're talking about is the future of how you invest your time to create a different future. And so in my case, for example, my first month I made like $70, and I had put in a full-time effort. And, you know, I poured in the hours, 6 hours a day, and could hardly contain myself during the weekends. And, and for $70, woohoo, which is probably 50 cents an hour or whatever. And then at the end of the first year, I'd made $7,000 over the course of the year, which is probably less than, you know, a part-time job even. You know, and over the course of the whole year, and during that whole time, I had put in significant hours.
Yeah, you were putting in full-time hours for $7,000 over
right.
a year.
And then the next year, of course, it jumped pretty dramatically to probably, the average median income in the U.S., you know. So by the end of the second year, I had generated, you know, what I probably could have done in an average job, you know. And then, but the moral of the story is as it's grown at 5 years, which has been a while ago now, but at 5 years, my average annual earning from the very first day was $200,000 a year. And now that's compounding more as we progress. And so that'll continue to climb, because now we're coming into 6 and 7 years in the business.
It's kind of like, I mean, Julianne hit the nail on the head in that this really does still come back down to belief and what you believe this can do for you, and if you truly believe it, then you put in the effort, you put in the work. You weren't concerned about the stuff. I mean, at any point in that first year, did you think about quitting? Where you're like, I probably shouldn't do this?
No, I was like all gung ho.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and because I knew what I was creating, and I actually came out with a formula of all that, and that I realized that whatever you create in your first 5 years, whatever that amount is, you'll essentially recreate it in the next 2. And
yeah, right.
So
right.
even if that amount is low, like you only put some time effort over a 5-year period, and your paycheck is running around $1,000 or whatever it is, you'll be able to recreate whatever you created in the 5 years in the next 2. Well, that's compounding growth. And that sheer fact, no matter what that number is, the next 2 years, the fact that it compounded in the next 2 years is essentially outpowers virtually any employment.
Yeah. Let me end the call with a couple of thoughts that kind of summarize a little bit about what we talked about. The purpose of the call was to talk about the difference between spare time, part-time, full-time, and the plateaus that you'll reach, and the decisions you're going to need to make to take this to a bigger level, to be able to break through some of those plateaus. But let's take a look at this, because I think sometimes people look at this and they'll go, 15 to 30 hours a week, that's a lot. That's a lot. Where am I going to find the time for 30 hours a week? And if someone's putting 30 hours a week into their business, they're going places. They are going to crush this. But here's the thing. Let's say that it was 30 hours a week. Well, you're going to hit you're going to hit diamond in about 2 years. You're going to hit blue diamond in about 3, and presidential diamond in around 4 to 6 years. So at what point is this not worth it? I mean, what job out there that exists can you get and say, hey, I want to work for you for the next 6 years, and I'm going to put 30 hours a week in. That's what I'm going to do. And I want $100,000 a month by the time this is over, and then I want to stop working. I want that $100,000 to continue forever. And I guess sometimes I just kind of look at that and go, what's the big deal? I mean,
Right.
I mean, we talked about how, this is harder than we think it is. When we first started, like, man, this is a lot harder than I thought it was. But then when you get to the ranks that we're at, you go, this should have been a lot harder than it was.
Right,
For the payoff that we're experiencing.
Right. David Ellis demonstrated that, basically you have the 40-40-40 plan, which is, you work 40 hours a week for 40 years to retire on 40% of what you made. But David pointed out that only 2% of people that choose that route actually retire with that amount.
With the 40%.
Right. And so if you have that's only 2% success rate with that group that chooses the 40-hour work week plan
40.
in a career path. And so the reality is you could spend your entire life at this, and virtually whatever it created is better than that outcome. And sometimes people don't realize that. I
Right.
think.
The other thing I wanted to point out is that many of you may have plateaued around anywhere from elite to silver. And you may be looking at like part-time, you're going, okay, that's 8 to 12 hours a week. I feel like I'm putting a lot of time into this. That's 2 hours a day. That's a lot. You're putting in time. And where you're going to plateau is a silver, which makes about $2,200 a month. And yet, if you double that, it doesn't double your income. It multiplies it by 50. And there's this really cool analogy that, when you're in horse racing, a horse may win by a nose, just a nose. But the horse that got first place makes 10 times what the horse made in second place. And the horse that got first place isn't 10 times the horse. It won by a nose. But the value that came back was 10 times the difference. And so I guess you're pointing out this importance of compounding effect of our time. If you will take that next leap and go to the next level, it isn't going to, you may double your time that you're committing to this, but it doesn't double your income. It is going to 10 to 50 times your income. And so this is where we get to the point where we implore people, like, please, it's not that much effort. It's hard. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's hard. But when you get there, you're going to go, this should have been a lot harder because the payoff has been so fantastic. Anyway, thanks for your input on this and for all the awesome advice and counsel we've got from everybody that participated. We'll see you all next week.
If you've enjoyed our videos, be sure to go over to edgesuccess.tv and subscribe to our YouTube channel.